Very excited to bring you this panel discussion on organization that supports neurodivergent brains. It's presented here by It's Just Stuff, Room Redefined, and House of Projects. I want to make sure that we allow each of them to introduce themselves. These are the experts. These are the people that we go to and we refer people to when they need their services or need their expertise. And so very excited to have three of you working together and showing how collaboration really makes a big impact. So thank you. I'm just going to start with who I see on the left to the right. And if you would go first and please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm Ann Pereira, and my business is called House of Projects. I'm based in Littleton, and I specialize in chronic disorganization and helping neurodivergent people get organized in their spaces. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin Gaskins, and I'm the owner of Room Redefined Professional Organizing. I'm based in Denver and work with clients throughout the Denver metro area. I've been working with clients for over 8 years and specialize in relationship-based organizing, which means that we're really focusing on understanding clients and their unique needs and how we can help them address their specific goals, which works very well for clients with neurodivergent minds. I'm a former educator, so I bring that to my work with my neurodivergent clients, as well as I'm mom to a neurodivergent son. So that gives me a lot of hands-on experience with it.
Love it. That's great. Thank you for sharing. And Beth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Blacker, and I refer to myself as the chief of chaos to calm it. It's just stuff. I like to say that I think I was born this way, wanting to help people with this. And as it turns out, it really was because I was diagnosed very late in life with ADHD, but my brain always craved systems and order. And I just didn't understand it for the first, 4 or 5 decades of my life, even though I also have a daughter who was diagnosed when she was a teenager. Her form of ADHD is more inattentive, mine's more hyper-focus, which I think everyone will agree that if you can hyper-focus, it's a great thing when you're a professional organizer to come into a space and find the low-hanging fruit and start peeling back all the layers and staying with it for many hours. But as we know, that's not necessarily sustainable, and that we have to learn when to take those brain breaks. Yeah. And that's something that I myself have had to really work on with my clients.
Yeah, thank you for those introductions. Again, happy to have you here. And, I think that's a really great segue, Beth, with what you just said right now, to kind of kick off our conversation. So the big why, why are we here? Why are we watching? Why are we tuning into you? Why is organization especially important for neurodivergent individuals and professionals? And how can it impact productivity, mental health, stress levels, and the overall quality of someone's life?
Do you just want one of us to jump in?
Why don't you just jump in, Beth?
I'm going to say the reason why it's so important for anybody, and I'm also going to say, I struggle with the idea of people talking about neurotypical versus neurodivergent, because I don't know what typical is anymore. I think we're all struggling with so many distractions out there, and that is creating a lot of external clutter that just keeps coming back as internal clutter. So, it's a vicious cycle that we really work hard at breaking for our clients. The physical and mental issues that arise as a result of clutter and chronic disorganization are proven by science, if we all still believe in science, which I think we all do on this particular panel. And that's what I stand by. And I'm sure that Ann and Erin probably agree with that.
Yeah. Erin, what's your take on that?
So I find that, like Beth was saying, organization isn't just important for the neurodivergent mind. It is particularly important for the neurodivergent mind, but I find that strategies that work particularly well for people that are, say, diagnosed as being neurodivergent, those strategies are equally important for people that don't have that diagnosis. So we find that they're really excellent organizational strategies for everybody. And so we find that everybody in our society right now that we're working with has this need to reduce their cognitive load and their mental fatigue. We're all suffering at times from executive functioning difficulties because we're just in a state of overwhelm. Maybe sometimes we're overwhelmed by our senses. And so we need to decrease what's happening around us. There's just so many different ways that organization comes into supporting us, whether we're neurodivergent or not. But I think all of us have found probably that when we started our business, at least this is what I noticed too, I was suddenly noticing that a large number of my clients were identifying as neurodivergent. So then you start looking at, okay, what is the connection between what we do and this diagnosis? And how do we make sure that we are best serving those clients while we're reaching clients that don't identify this way as well? So it's kind of one and all.
Points there. And do you have anything to add?
I think you guys said it pretty well. I don't think we
All
can.
right. And how can organization move beyond simply cleaning your room or cleaning your office to actually improving how we live and how we're working?
Well, I think organizing can really, the focus can be to support function over aesthetics and to design supportive environments and systems that work with the way the client's brain naturally works. So I think that, does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Sometimes when I start talking, I forget where we were going.
No worries. No worries. Beth or Erin, do you have anything to add to that? Like, how do we move from cleaning your home or your office to actually like improving how we live and we work?
The first thing I want to note too is like society tends to have the stereotype that people that are disorganized or live in cluttered environments are lazy.
Yeah.
Or they just don't care. And so much of the time that's not the case. It's not that they don't care. It's just that their mind doesn't function that way, or they don't have the time to put into establishing the systems and routines that will support them in living in organized and functional environments. They're spread so thin. So I think the first thing we can do is eliminate that stereotype.
Yeah.
People aren't lazy. People, it's not that they don't care. People very much care, but they may not have the time or the ability to put those systems in place. So that's the first thing. And then it's starting to put some simple practices in place. One of the things, would this be a good time for me to just share a simple?
Yeah. Go ahead if you want to start, because I think that leads us, I'd really like to know, like from all three of you, you're all working with a lot of clients and you've all said neurodivergent clients especially. So I'd love to hear more from you. If you could share, what are some common things that you're hearing from your clients or that you're seeing? And then you could maybe share your slide with us.
Okay, let's go ahead and share. And
Yeah.
do you want me to share the slide about neurodivergent support for neurodivergent minds?
We'll get to that maybe in the next question.
I'll wait on that one then.
I was just going to add that I think for a lot of people, whether they're neurodivergent or not, they are overwhelmed, as we've already said, but also embarrassed by what they're currently surrounded with and living with. And that sometimes is the obstacle that they create for themselves in even having the conversation with one of us. And if they could just get to the place where they understand we're not coming in to judge them or disparage them. We want to truly help, just like any other expert out there, whether it's a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant giving advice. That's what we are. We're a consultant, we're a coach, we're a care manager, we're a therapist, but without any of those titles, that's really what we become for people. And it's really important that they understand our job is not to tell them they have to do anything. It's to guide them as best as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's a great point. Erin, and do you want to add anything that you see very common or any other stereotypes or things that you see for anybody?
I think one thing I'm always really emphasizing with my clients is deconstructing this belief that they all seem to bring to this work that I should be able to do this by myself. And I've been trying to do this by myself for, years, my whole life, whatever. And they're bringing a lot of negative narratives to this challenge. And I always respond with, there are things I don't do well on my own. And I have I've learned for myself, I need to resource the right kind of support for the things that I know I'm not going to be great at. You're great at something else. You're bringing other amazing things to the world, whatever those things are. As I get to know the client, we're always looking at highlighting that and then moving past whatever the things that are the challenges and working on them together, because we're always a lot stronger and better when we're doing them together.
Such a great point.
I tell my clients all the time that, we do a really, really, really crappy job in this country encouraging people to seek out help like this. And, therapy, is still considered kind of like what's wrong with you. And that is just doing us, our entire society, a disservice, in my opinion. People should not be shamed into thinking that there's something wrong with them. There's past traumas that they're probably experiencing that is creating this current situation for themselves. And they need to know that they're being supported through not just by us, but, I really encourage a lot of my clients, if you don't have a therapist, get one, because it really does take a village to overcome these situations in a lot of cases.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great question. And, I was wondering from you all if you might want to, if you could possibly share an example. So let's say you have a client who comes to you and they have sensory sensitivities. What would you possibly, be on the lookout for? What kind of suggestions would you give that person about possibly their space to make sure that they need? Is there something that any of you that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, right away, if somebody has sensory sensitivities, we want to start thinking about how much input is coming into them all the time. And that's one of the first things I look at in my consultations with people is what are their sensitivities? How do they talk or react when they're in their spaces? And where do the stresses seem to be coming from? And so then where are we going to remove some of those stressors? So, and that visual clutter that's creating some of those sensitivities can come from just having too much stuff around them. So maybe we need to edit some things out. Maybe it's because there's too much of one kind of thing. For example, they're going to Costco and buying in bulk, and they don't have places to store the bulk when really they just need out the one item that they're using at that moment in time. So we need to create some back stock. Or maybe they've started to create organizational systems, but there's no visual cohesion what they're putting in place. So everything's different colors and sizes and nothing fits together right. So those are just some very simple strategies that we can start to put into place to reduce that visual noise that's coming in to them, depending on what they need.
Right. Exactly. Because all brains are different. Someone who's autistic may have different needs from someone with ADHD, and everybody's a little bit different. So thank you for sharing. Is there any other examples that you'd like to share with maybe one of your clients, something you noticed?
I mean, I have clients that, before we get started, I always ask them, how much time do you want to lapse in between me asking you, how are you doing? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Do you need a hug right now? Do you need to go take a break? This is a conversation that I think is really important to have before ever getting started, so that everybody is on the same page about, what the day is going to really look like. And nobody gets to the point of overwhelm. It's going to happen, even if we try really hard. But I think we're all pretty good about picking up on visual cues when, I can see when a client is suddenly getting overwhelmed. Sometimes they'll shake. Sometimes they won't respond to me. And so that's my time to say, hey, I think it's time we take a break. Not everybody can keep going for hours and hours and hours.
And I think that's what makes all three of you so special and unique, is that you understand neurodivergent brains. You live it, you have that shared experience. So you could really impact somebody's life. You can really help guide them through that, which, not to say that other organizers or people that help people, they're not great at, but the fact that you really specialize, you really could have that shared experience with somebody and say, look, I get it and I understand, and give them what they need at that moment, which a lot of people would maybe not know what to do if somebody was feeling overwhelmed or having a moment, but you all three could pick up on those cues, and you know how to kind of bring them out of that. And that, I think, is just super impactful and unique of the three of you.
Yeah. I think that we constantly have to remember that this is not a luxury service for the vast majority of our clients. It's really a necessity. And for our, again, we can go back to society and the shame that they want to put on people, reminding our clients constantly that this is no different than them going to the doctor when they're not feeling well, or going to a lawyer when they need legal advice. Or like me, I have an accountant who does my taxes every year. I don't even want to be the person to have to generate the 1099s. I know there's a button that I can push, but I don't want that responsibility. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with me hiring somebody to come and clean my space once or twice a month if that's something that I don't enjoy doing. Can I do it? Sure. Do I want to do it? No. I live in a beautiful place that I want to go out and do things. We all work really hard so that we can play hard.
Right. That's a great point. And again, that's like working with your brain, right? Instead of against it. And you know that. And that's something we all know. You should do things that give you strength, that give you energy, and not drain from you. So Erin, I want to give you this next question. I'd love for you. And I think you might even have a slide that you can share with us after that. But organizing often requires, that there's a lot of tasks, there's decision making, right? How do I categorize this? And sustain attention, right? Some people could start something and not finish it, or get overwhelmed in the beginning and not be like, I just can't. And there goes that. So how do you adapt your approach with your clients who experience executive functioning challenge or overwhelm?
Yeah, well, first, let's do this. Before we talk specifically about executive function and overwhelm, I just want to share a general strategy that I think we all kind of subscribe to. Sorry, I'm just figuring out my share function.
Yeah, why don't you click to the right bottom corner and make it large? The bottom right, there's 2 arrows. You're almost there, a little bit down.
Yep.
Go down. Yeah.
There you
go.
There
we go. Okay. Yep. I just had to find the right one for the right thing. I'm going to go back one slide. And what I want to share is that so many times when people contact me, they're like, you know what? I've been to the Container Store, I've been to Target, I've bought all of these organizing products, nothing works, and here are all the products downstairs in my basement creating more clutter. I must be a failure at this. And I always back up with them and start talking about, you know what, this is what the process is really needs to look like to be successful, and have you done these steps? And I want to share that today because I think if anybody can follow these steps and find some success in it. So when we're coming to work with clients, the first thing we do when we get to their space is, whether it's a large space, say we're working in a kitchen, or whether it's a small space and we're looking at their junk drawer, we want to start with the things that we have in that space and just sort and categorize them. What's in that space? We need to know what's there before we can figure out what to do with them. And so it's just this process of identifying and putting into piles, kind of like with like. Once we've sorted and categorized, then we can edit. We can ask some questions. What should still live in this space? If we're talking about a junk drawer, what do you need to have in that drawer to have easily accessible? What do you need to have in your house, but maybe not in that drawer and can go somewhere else in your house? What doesn't need to stay in your house or that drawer, and we can either throw away or donate or recycle. So we can get rid of those things, and then we're left with what really needs to stay in that drawer or in your whole kitchen. Then we can start to assign home to things. If it's going to live in a drawer, do we need some bins to categorize it? How are things going to fit in that space? Or if it's going to live in your kitchen, what cabinets are they going to go into? And then we can start to containerize and make it fit well so that it will stay in those spaces over the long period of time. And the last thing I want to point out is, just because we get everything into a home and fitting well in there nicely doesn't mean you're done. Some things that are really key, and I think this is especially true for the neurodivergent mind, but really for everybody, is put some labels on the homes for things. So many times clients will say, I don't need labels, this is great. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to ask me to come back in 3 months because there's no accountability system set in place. So Put those strategies to maintain in place. Put some labels on things. Put up some reminders for yourself and how you're going to use your system. Or set up a calendar reminder that in 3 months you're going to come back and review that space and see if it's still working for you. So these are some general strategies that I think to some degree, and Beth and Anne, you can kind of speak to this too. Do you follow kind of the same generalized approach when you're going and working with clients, neurodivergent or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is kind of standard,
Yeah.
professional organizing 101. The biggest mistake people make, of course, is going out and buying all the containers before they've figured out what they actually have and they're going to keep. I had one client that was like insisting that she redo her closet. And by redo, I mean redesign it before she had actually edited the clothes. And I'm like, you don't know how many long hanging versus short hanging things you have or how many spaces you need for shoes until you go through this process.
I think another thing I see pretty often is that my clients will have like these, they call them different names, but like a doom pile or jumble bins or randomonium, one of my clients calls it, and they'll have quite a collection. And when they try to address it alone, they'll take each item and say, I need to put this somewhere. And then it breaks their brain and they're immediately overwhelmed because it's so many individual decisions and tasks. And so I always use like a macro sort approach where we don't like take anything and put it anywhere right now, but we just unmix those bins into very broad categories with making no decisions. And then suddenly it all starts to make more sense and feel a little more approachable because we've separated paper from the sunscreen, from the gum, and then kind of just do a real broad step first and then address those smaller categories separately.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a matter of us being there as, we talk about body doubling, right? It's just a matter of being there to hold their hand and their heart for that matter through the process. It's not rocket science what we do. It's just looking at things a little bit differently than they've been able to look at it.
Yeah. We can step back from the process and see it in more of a systematic way, whereas they've been so embedded in it. It's really hard for individuals to step back. And I think that's true for anyone in any kind of a mess they're in. Having somebody with an outside perspective is so beneficial. And that's
so it's not our feelings or our, we don't bring the same emotions, just like I need help with my own stuff. My own stuff overwhelms me, but it doesn't overwhelm me in other people's houses.
I spent 20 minutes with I emptied out my purse this morning and I'm like, oh my God, where did all this come from? And it took me a while. I'm like, all right, how much of this do I really need to keep in here? It took me longer than I thought it was going to take because it was my stuff as opposed to when I go to a client and I have them empty out their bag and go, well, you don't need 40 pens. But then I was thinking, I do need 40 pens soon because I'm going to be at an expo where people take my pens off the table constantly and I have to replenish the pens. So yeah, we all go through this, I promise.
Yeah.
So I know there might be some people listening and they may be overwhelmed looking at the pile that they have or something that they've been just meaning, like I have this mail. I know I have a pile of mail that I just put in a bin and I have not done anything with, and it's overwhelming to think about doing it. So what could you do, if you could give some steps for the person listening that's overwhelmed with, oh my God, I have all these things to do and their head's probably already racing. What do you do? Like, what could you do? What could you say to that person? And how could you make them in case, they do decide, hey, I want to make this step. I want to take this on. But what could you say right now? How would you make them feel more comfortable about making the call and asking for help? It's very hard for people to ask for help. So how do they do?
Yeah. I think if they're wanting to do it themselves, the first thing is to start small and give yourself grace to just, like I like to tell people, start with 15 minutes. Give yourself 15 minutes, even 5 minutes a day, because 5 minutes a day adds up to a whole lot over a month. You're amazed with what you can get done. So the big thing is to start small. But if that is overwhelming, reach out for help, because So many times just having that partner in place helps you see how to get from this, your starting point, to your ending point. We can draw that line between the start and the end and help give you that confidence that those little 5-minute steps that you're taking are actually getting you closer to your goal. And sometimes that's hard to see when you haven't experienced that success before.
There's all kinds of rules and tips and tricks that people have come up with through the years. I know one of the, the most famous one is like what Erin was mentioning, you just set aside those little chunks of time every day. I tell my clients to put it on their calendar, make an appointment with yourself, and hopefully make the appointment at the same time every day. So if the same time every day is 8 o'clock at night, hopefully you don't have fatigue at that point, that you can still do it. But again, if it's only 5 minutes, how long, you're supposed to brush your teeth for 2 minutes, maybe walk around with your toothbrush, brushing your teeth and picking things up. I don't know. There's also the idea of the Pomodoro technique, which is, you set a timer for 20 minutes and you do that task for 20 minutes. And then you take a brain break for 5 minutes, set the timer for that. And then if you're still feeling strong enough, you go back and do another 20 minutes. And before you know it, you're able to do an hour or 2 hours. But don't ever take on more than you can chew in one session. And if that one session is 5 minutes, don't start ripping apart your whole closet. Just take a little section of your closet, maybe just your sweaters, whatever the category is that you feel like you can actually get through in those 5 or 10 minutes every day.
Yeah. And I was wondering, Erin, if you could explain, what is the create easy start and stop zones?
So that's where, like, you think about entering your house, that's maybe you're either starting a process or you're stopping a process. So like you're stopping your work day. You want to come in and put your things away easily. So do you have a place where there's room to hang up your coat, room to set your work bag, room for your kids to hang their backpacks, as opposed to just dropping everything on the floor? And some of that is analyzing what the people in your home are most likely to do. So if they're least likely to hang up, maybe it's creating bins where they can put things. The easy start places are maybe you're making simple checklists for your kids. What do they need to do when they get up each morning? They need to get dressed, brush their teeth, and make their breakfast. Something like that. So that's what those easy stop and start examples are.
That's wonderful. And, I want to talk a little bit more about emotions that people go through, decision fatigue, which is something that people experience. Beth, I'd love for you to kind of, maybe touch on this point for us. How do you help with clients navigate the emotions that they feel, or, decision fatigue, when they do have the strong, maybe they're decluttering emotions to certain things and they do not want to get rid of it, or their collection, maybe they're even having anxiety of you touching their things or helping them or being in their space. So I'd love for you to kind of explain, how do you approach that?
I think part of it is just having a very empathetic and compassionate mindset in general. This is not a career for the faint at heart. And this is not a career for like a very black and white kind of person. There is so much gray matter in this process, and we are constantly having to sort of pivot from thinking, okay, this person's on task, they're ready to go, and then all of a sudden they'll look at one little tchotchke and completely break down. So that again is where you have to look at them and say, okay, do you want to take a break right now? Do you need more than a couple of minutes? Do you need a hug? Do you need to go call somebody? Do you need to write something down so that you can honor this feeling and then be able to move on? Again, we're not therapists, but we understand, certain therapeutic type of recommendations that we can help people with. But again, if they're going to be triggered over and over and over again through this process, that is when I would stop them and say, maybe this is when we need to really bring in your therapist so that they can pick up on when you're starting to break down and decompensate, and handle that end of it so that we can keep moving through the physical side of it with them.
Right. Erin, Anne, would you like to add anything to that? No, I think
It's
that
definitely a very personal process and a very emotional process. I think organizers know, like, you never know what the client may not have expected for some of the feelings that come up or some of the things that are found that hadn't been seen for a long time, and bringing up memories that are good and bad. And so definitely being comfortable with holding space for people to process, their feelings as needed. And then, like Beth said, taking breaks and then recognizing when maybe a different kind of support is what's needed before they can really approach the physical part of dealing with this stuff. So.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, don't commit to this unless you're really ready, because then you're just setting yourself up for failure and you're wasting time, money, and energy.
Yeah, definitely. Great suggestions. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about designing systems that actually work for our brains. And so, how do you design organizing systems that are realistic for someone's brain?
I like to approach each client situation kind of through a coaching lens. And what I mean by that is coming into it kind of believing the client is the expert on themselves. And they might not even agree with me when I say that, but kind of using just some strategic questions to sort of draw out like what's most important to them and how their brain works and how they function in the space, and getting some clarity on their goals can help create some functionality that's maybe not there right now. So let me see. I think I have a little slide that with, there we go. Let's see, but it's not this slide. I apologize. I meant to click on. So thinking outside the box, and not everybody is going to thrive in the same kind of system. So if something that they've been doing isn't working, let's do a series of little experiments and try something else. I think it's important to, here's what I was looking for, recognize that there's a lot of different, oh, what happened? Sorry. I didn't touch anything and it just went away.
This is why I have trust issues.
Right.
Technology.
So sometimes grouping items based on the way a client thinks instead of maybe in a more traditional way that's linear or chronological. I always emphasize focusing on function over aesthetics, even though I still think a functional space can be aesthetic as well. Like Erin and Beth said, like making things visual for people to remember what's most important, but removing the additional noise to help it just keep things, the most important things in view. And like Erin said, reducing cognitive load by creating systems, especially with awareness of transitions. That's a huge thing for anybody to recognize where transitionings are happening in their time and in their space, and then creating some functional zones to support those transitions. And I think, again, that one of the biggest ones I'm always trying to encourage my clients, don't try to maintain this by yourself forever. That is not my expectation, that this system is going to then be self-supporting for the rest of time. It's totally normal to need some help with resetting or making adjustments over time, because things get boring or our needs change, or you just need something new and interesting to support how you're living today.
Even bringing a dog or a cat into the house can completely disrupt your organizational flow and systems, because you've now got to make room for all of that, those supplies. When you have a new baby, people don't realize how much baby paraphernalia there is, right? So our lives are constantly evolving. People are downsizing as seniors. They have to go from sometimes 3,000 or 4,000 square feet down to 300 or 400 square feet. And I say it all the time. We can't expand the four walls, raise the ceiling, lower the floor of a space. I mean, people can remodel their home, but you can't go into, let's say, an assisted living community and expand the space. You can only work with the four walls that they've given you. So, things are always evolving. I see my space even evolve over time, based on what my current needs are. And, we live in Colorado, everybody has gear, right? We've got to make room for all that gear, and yet make room for it as the seasons change, even though we haven't had winter really this year. my car, I don't know about Aaron and Ann, but my car is constantly in flux between work and personal stuff. And it's hard. It's really hard to keep track of all of those things. But, I've gotten pretty good at having the right bins or containers, even inside my car, to contain the things so that I know, okay, this is my work bin, this is my hiking bin, this is my, paddle boarding bin, whatever it is. And bins are constantly going in and out of my car. And that may be what other people have to do too.
Yeah. So you'll help people organize their car too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've done car cleanouts.
Yeah.
I'm not,
sure.
they are, some of them are bad, really, really bad. I'm just going to say, and if my daughter was on this call right now, she would admit that her car was literally like it was a garbage dump all through high school and college. And she lives in New York now, so she doesn't have a car. But, it was bad. I mean, we used to have to plug our nose. Like, what died in here? Yeah, it's not something that I was particularly proud of as her mother at the time. But I also tell my clients, if they have a child that or a significant other who really is not buying into their need for order, like in my house, nobody else cared about order. They just didn't. I needed it, but they didn't need it, or they didn't care enough about it. So everybody was entitled to do whatever they wanted to do in their rooms and their spaces, as long as it didn't impact the common areas. And there was nothing literally growing from underneath the door like Little Shop of Horrors, or I couldn't smell it when I walked by. I was fine with it. And you have to make peace with, if you're going to live with other people, you have to make peace with the fact that they're not necessarily going to have the same buy-in that you're going to have. It's hard. And sometimes I recommend to clients that they sit down with the people that they live with and say, hey, I'm going to spend the time and the money and the energy creating better systems for us, and I need your buy-in for this. What's everybody willing to agree to? And write up a contract and sign it and have regular meetings discussing, well, why am I still seeing all these things all over the house? And make everybody take a little bit of ownership and responsibility.
Yeah, that's a good tip for people with families. So we have a few minutes left, and I thought I wanted to have, I had a question for each of you, and I thought this would be a good closing for Neurodiversity Week and for our discussion. For someone, that feels overwhelmed by the organization, what is one step that they could just take today, besides calling you, which we'll talk about that, but what's just one thing they could all do? If somebody's feeling overwhelmed with their space right now, and they're like, I want to try and take this on, or, I think one of you shared a tip on 15 minutes a day, or, Beth, you said even while you're brushing your teeth, pick some stuff up, so it's like, what's one thing that each of you, if you could just go around really quickly and say what you'd recommend?
I think it's important for people to figure out where to direct their energy, where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. So kind of taking stock of their home or their office or whichever space they're thinking about, and address, like, if I solve this one thing, it will give me the most stress relief. And once they answer that question, that's the first question. And then the second question is why? Why am I going to do this? Because if you can answer your why, and you've got that goal in mind, then when the work gets hard or it gets less fun, you always have that to fall back on. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to be more productive, or because I want a space that I'm excited to have guests in, or I want a space that helps me be more successful in my business. Whatever your why is, if you've got that and you're holding on to that, it helps feed that momentum when things get hard. Mm-hmm. So those are my big starting places.
That's a good one. Anne?
Well, I was going to say, just do one thing. Erin expanded really beautifully on the one thing, but don't overthink the one thing. Just because I think when motion sometimes precedes the motivation. So if you just take action in one simple thing, even, that can help kind of create some momentum that helps you keep going. with
That's
maybe
good
one
tip.
next thing.
Yeah. Beth?
I'm just going to make a really general kind of statement that can hopefully resonate and become kind of a little bit of a mantra for people. I tell clients all the time, don't just put something down, put it away. It takes 4 times the energy if you put it down and then you see it and then it causes all of this like anxiety, like why didn't I put it away already? Try and remember not to just put something down, put it away. And I'll give a really good example of where that could apply that you may not think about. Stop bringing junk mail into the house. The minute you get your mail, sort through it before you even come in your house. Everybody either has a garbage can or something in their garage if they've got a garage, or put a garbage can where you walk in the house every day with your mail, and just immediately throw out the junk mail, because that piles up. People are like, I'll just put it over here and I'll eventually get to it. And then I walk in a year later and they've got a year's worth of junk mail sitting in a pile.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some really, really great tips. I think our time is up, but I appreciate all three of you and the time and effort to share this information, your expertise. Before I let you go, could you just let everybody know, how do they find you? Beth, you want to go first?
Well, again, the name of the company is It's Just Stuff. Have a website, social media. I'm out networking and meeting people all the time, doing presentations. It shouldn't be hard, I don't think, to find any of us. Actually, we're everywhere, and we're also, the three of us, in a nice little group, a private group on Facebook, that we share a lot of resources. So when one of us isn't available, it's possible that we'll refer a client to the other person.
Amazing. Erin, how do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, and sorry, my throat is suddenly all itchy. So Room Redefined, you can just find my website right online. Excuse me. And on there's a link where you can let me know that you're interested in chatting or booking a consultation or setting up a work session with us. So I get emails directly from that. You can also, my phone number is all over the website, so you're welcome to reach directly out to me there too. And like Beth said, we're at lots of neurodiversity resource fairs and on Facebook and so forth. So I would welcome reaching out, even if you just have questions about, like, hey, I really want to just know more. I'm not sure if this is right for me. I welcome the conversations, because I think I can speak for all of us. We just love to talk about what we do. Share the enthusiasm is just kind of in our blood.
I think we all provide a free consult because it's important that the clients know that the personality will be a good fit, because we're all different, right? And we should, if it's not going to be a good personality fit for me, I have no trouble referring them to, somebody like Erin or Anne.
Great. And Anne, how do we find you?
My website's houseofprojectsllc.com. And I also have you can schedule right on the website to do a free 30-minute phone call just to talk about whatever is on your mind with your organizing needs. So
wonderful. We'll make sure that we drop your links in our comments as well. You could also find their information at the chamber website, cndcc.org, and go to our business directory, and they're all listed there, and you can get access to them. So again, thank you, ladies, for being on this. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you.